definition of overstanding. What we as Rastafari, when we say overstanding, many of us as Rastafari should understand, or should have a basic comprehension, basic working knowledge, biblically speaking. And this is according to the teachings of His Imperial Majesty, according to Haile Selassie. He says, "For my part, I glory in the Bible. Therefore, for we who take on the name of Rastafari, the name of Haile Selassie, we take on that glory. We need to also recognize that our glory is in the Bible and to follow the King of Kings' example." Salam Tanat, greetings again. This is Ras Iadonis Tafari, and we wanted us to go into a little more detail because we dealt with overstanding, the biblical definition of overstanding. What we as Rastafari, when we say overstanding, many of us as Rastafari should understand, or should have a basic comprehension, basic working knowledge, biblically speaking. And this is according to the teachings of His Imperial Majesty, according to Haile Selassie. He says, "For my part, I glory in the Bible. Therefore, for we who take on the name of Rastafari, the name of Haile Selassie, we take on that glory. We need to also recognize that our glory is in the Bible and to follow the King of Kings' example." So study. We have to study and show ourselves approved, first of all. So what we're going to do, since we dealt with the first part of this series, dealing with overstanding in the Bible, what we're going to do is focus on one of the I think it's Thalers, it's from the Schofield, it's also in the Schofield link, but the concordance of Epi-Gnosis, and that is dealing with 2 Timothy, the epistle of the Gnostic Hebraic apostle Paulos, Epi-Gnostic, and we declare that Hawaria Paulos was Epi-Gnostic. And many counterfeit Christians have criticized Gnosis because it's something that they don't want you to know. You understand the truth of Christ and the truth of Christ's way. He says, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." But what do they preach in most of the counterfeit churches? Be-lie-eve. Not even the correct word, amen, but be-lie-eve. If one would do a study on the word amen or amen in the Bible, which is the word behind the counterfeit word be-lie-eve, one would find a whole different reality. And that's also going to be an important study. We've touched on that before in previous lectures, but hopefully to go over it again. So what we want to focus on right here is the more footnoted definition, to go over the footnoted definition of Epi-Gnosis. Epi-Gnosis. Now, Epi-Gnosis. Now, we're going to read through this definition right here. This is like a biblical etymology. Not just etymology of words, but now in the biblical sense, so that when we read and study the Bible, we will know what the Bible is really saying. We won't have to depend on opinion, you understand, doxa, you understand, or one's opinion, one's doxa, you understand, or so-called doctrine, you know, of men and people and counterfeit Christians, but we can actually trust what we know to be the truth. So we now recognize that overstanding or Epi-Gnosis is in the Bible. And now this puts the emphasis on gnosis or gnosis from the Christ point of view, from the Christ mind, the Christos Aimro, from the Christos Aimro. And Aimro, Aimero, and Aimro is also a very important part of the study, because that word is translated often to be mind, the mind of Christ. You understand? Because in our being born again, we are to reject, deny, forsake that so-called natural mind, that mind that's been conformed to the ways of the world, and to be transformed, according to Romans chapter 12, by the renewing of our mind. And the only way to renew our mind is to grow in the true gnosis, or the Epi-Gnosis of Getachina med Hanetachin Jesus Christos. So Epi-Gnosis, from Epi-Gnosko. The second word in the Greek is Epi-Gnosko. Now it has a colon reference, also Bishop Lightfoot on Colossians 1 and 9, and Trench 50, 60, 70, 75, ad fin, which is ad infinitum, to the finish, something to that effect. But Epi-Gnosis, the first definition is precise, is correct, knowledge, what Epi-Gnosis, which appears about 20 times underneath the King James word for knowledge in the New Testament, according to the Koine, according to the Greek, Epi-Gnosis, which is not fully translated by King James in the King James Version, it means full knowledge. And when we as Rastafari say overstand and overstanding, in spirit and in truth, what the true Rastafari is pointing to is this very word here that we've been studying in the scripture by using the case in point from 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 7. 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 7. So here we have precise and correct knowledge used in the NT, which is New Testament, or Hadis Kidan, or Bebrayist is the Berit Hadasha, the New Testament, of the knowledge of things ethical and divine. So when we speak of overstanding as true born-again Rastafari, when we speak of overstanding, we must speak of it in the sense of the glory of the King of Kings, and that means based on the Metzhaf Kedus, or based on the Holy Bible. Alright? And now what we're referencing right here is based on the study of the Bible, so-called King James Version of the Bible, and then going beneath that into the Masoretic Hebrew, as well as the Koine Greek, and going into the Greek. And then when we study it from there, we now compare that with the Amharic Bible of Haile Selassie first. You understand? And then we get into the Gu'as and our true roots. But one thing we find that is very much similar is that when we go to the original languages behind the King James, we find an amazing harmony of agreement. While those who read the Metzhaf Kedus of the Holy Bible of Haile Selassie, and with a proper logos, a proper Christ mind, and a proper overstanding, will get it. When you read King James, you have to study King James. So many people talk about reading King James, but we need to study and show ourselves approved. So Epi-Gnosis, full knowledge, or in the gnosis, or the really full knowledge, means the precise and correct knowledge, which means there can be imprecise and there can be incorrect knowledge. So everybody talks about knowledge, but every knowledge may not be precise and may not be correct knowledge. Now, in the sense of the Hadis Kidan, or the New Covenant, which we as true Rastafari are those who are in the New Covenant, what we have to recognize is that in the sense of the Hadis Kidan, the New Covenant, it's in the sense of knowledge of things ethical. What is ethical and divine? Now, the early and the truer Rastafari, you understand, in that manifestation of Rastafari, that manifestation of the new name and those who will be of the new name according to Revelation, that moral theocracy, remember moral theocracy, those sort of foundational Rastafari ideas, which unfortunately are not really preached and taught or sung about so much anymore. You understand, in this sort of apostasy that it seems has gone on among many who were called but fell away. The true knowledge or overstanding must first of all, for Rastafari and for all Ethiopian Hebrews and even Gentiles who are turning from the world and the God of the world to the King of Kings and His Christ, must be based upon things ethical and divine. Not just ethical and not just so-called divine or spiritual, but ethical and divine. You understand? So that we can practice and perfect. Now, some scriptures here is quoted, and I would advise this strongly, because perhaps we'll go through a more detailed lecture on this. It's just kind of showing you how to study, how one must study these things, because we're just focusing on this one word, overstanding. Because if we don't understand what overstanding really means in the true context of Rastafari, if you don't understand in the true context of the King of Kings and His Christ, then all you're left with is nonsense. Because if we don't understand what overstanding really means in the true context of Rastafari, If you don't understand the true context of the King of Kings and His Christ, then all you're left with is nonsense. Because if we don't understand what overstanding really means in the true context of Rastafari, if you don't understand the true context of the King of Kings and His Christ, then all you're left with is nonsense, 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 nonsense.